Antoinette, thank you so much for joining me on the Public Sector Marketing Show.
Sure. It's great to be here.
So listen, tell us about the work of the Association of Garda Sergeants and Inspectors.
Well, we are an association, as you say, a trade union of sorts that represents almost 2,500 middle-ranking sergeants and inspectors from all over Ireland in our association. And I suppose our function is to progress matters relating to their pay, welfare, working conditions, and rostering and other such arrangements.
And so why is Twitter an important platform for AGSI's work then?
Well, Twitter is actually a huge platform. I mean, first of all, in my role as General Secretary, I suppose I use it as a platform to communicate issues relating matters relating to issues that government are talking about. For instance, there's no more hot topic at the moment than public sector pay. And sometimes I might see something on Twitter and I'll use it to challenge. I suppose it's also a communication method for us and a very fast and efficient way of communicating out AGSI issues. As you know, it's a platform, a communication platform that's frequented by journalists. So I suppose if we're advocating on something, we use it as a platform as well to raise issues that we have, and it does get a lot of attention.
And like one observation that I would make is while AGSI is active on Twitter, it's when you speak and you use your own account to advocate for your members that can often get more traction. So you kind of have that role as driving your work through Twitter through your personal account as well, right?
Yeah, sure. I have my own personal Twitter account, and it's funny because my account has actually more followers than the AGSI Twitter account, which in a way I'm quite surprised about. But I suppose I have to be very careful, and I do find that I have to limit my own opinions on my own account because it is followed by so many people, and because I am the General Secretary of AGSI. For instance, I can't get drawn into political debate as much as I would like to at times, because the Garda organisation, as you know, is supposed to be apolitical. So I do find myself at times quite restrained in my own commentary and things that I would like to engage in by virtue of the job that I do. So although it is my own account, if I say anything that contradicts the Garda position, for example, I could get into difficulty with that. So I do have to be mindful of what I say on it.
And let's remind the viewers and the listeners that you still are a Garda inspector within Garda Síochána. So, you know, that role in itself is an important role. It's a high profile role. You've got a high profile role in AGSI. But do you believe, given your experience on Twitter, that other public figures in government and public sector and in politics should be using Twitter to communicate their work in the public interest?
Oh, I absolutely do, Joanna. And as you rightly say, first and foremost, I am a member of Garda Síochána at Inspector rank. I am attached to Garda headquarters, but seconded over on a full-time role to be the General Secretary of AGSI. I think Twitter is a huge platform for leaders, for company CEOs, for politicians, for people like me who hold senior positions in jobs, businesses, cultural committees, anything at all, because it gets the message of who you are and what you do and what your company does, what you do as a politician. But I would say that you do need to make your profile as public as you can, have a good picture, have your company logo, make sure that people trust that it is your Twitter account and not some fake Twitter account that's out there, because there is a lot of challenges on Twitter as well, as you know. But I think, yes, for leaders, for company CEOs, for business people, for small industry, public and private forums, I think it's an excellent platform. It's a huge communication platform.
You make a really good point there about visibility and transparency, because in the world of the internet and on Twitter in particular, you know, trying to dissect the truth from the fake news and the disinformation. So people showing up as themselves adds huge value to the work of their organization. And I think, then this is why I invited you on the show, you're a great example of bringing that kind of trusted voice to the association. So within the organization, do your own members value what you're doing on Twitter on their behalf?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Garda Info itself, which is the Garda Twitter account, as you know, has hundreds of thousands of followers. So that'll tell you the power of that platform. And I suppose they would often even lean on the associations to pass a message, maybe that is a united message that's serving all our interests, or indeed the public interest, for the greater good. So we would quite often retweet stuff from Garda Info to endorse their message. That can be anything from an operational requirement, such as a missing person, a cry alert where maybe there's an urgent situation around children, some event that Garda Info might be promoting. And then people will know that we're actually endorsing the message of the Garda organisation, so that we're both collaborating on this to show a united front on something. You know what I mean? So the Garda organisation itself has a massive Twitter following. And then, as I say, we are a branch of those anyway, even though we have our own independent association as the Association of Garda Sergeants and Inspectors. But we are all wearing the blue uniform at the end of the day.
So while you are engaged in social media for good, that is not what we can say for every Twitter user. And unfortunately, abuse on the platform is widespread and vitriol. Now, have you experienced a personal abuse on the Twitter platform? And if you have, how have you dealt with it?
Yeah, well, I suppose I have, Joanne, and you're right in what you say. You know, there is a lot of, on Twitter, anonymous accounts, sometimes fake accounts set up for the purposes of impersonating others. We had a recent experience of that in AGSI. We had to make a report to Twitter. We were lucky we got a good outcome. I think there's more that Twitter can do itself about making sure that public profiles are there, that people's pictures are validated, maybe more checks and balances before somebody is allowed to open a Twitter account. Regrettably, I have had personal experience of being abused on Twitter, abused by an anonymous fake account, which I had to take the unusual stance of reporting it to the Garda authorities, and where it was looked into. I won't say any more, Joanne, about it for operational reasons, but yes, I can certainly empathise and sympathise with people when I see them being targeted on Twitter, when I see them being abused, vitriol directed at them, and I certainly have been a victim of that. I suppose I've been around the Garda organisation a long time. I've developed a certain resilience. When you're in the public eye, you do have to develop a certain resilience from time to time, but sometimes it crosses that line, and we all have a line in us of what's acceptable or not acceptable to us. And certainly when something becomes personal or targets your family, then I think it's crossing into a very dangerous and unacceptable line.
So the media, about 96-97% of the country's media and journalists are active on Twitter. Does that give you leverage to kind of amplify the traditional PR activity that you're engaged in?
Yeah, well, of course it does, because, you know, traditionally, years ago, we would have had to issue a press release and we would have had to get it out in the traditional methodology through all the media outlets, wait for them to pick it up. I find now sometimes if I tweet something from my own account or the AGSI account, I get an almost within 3 minutes instantaneous response. I'll be getting calls from journalists asking us to make comments or to issue a statement on it. So I think there's massive leverage there. And that's why I think for companies and individuals who want to use Twitter, it's an excellent communication. It's fast, it's efficient, it's national and international, as you know. So you put up a tweet there and it reaches out to millions and millions and millions of people within seconds. And so I can cross countries to other police forces. I can cross borders. There's no limitations on who the audience reach is. So it's a fantastic communication methodology. And as I said, definitely I have put up tweets and I've had almost an instantaneous response from journalists on the platform.
Are there times when Twitter is the wrong channel to use for communications?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, one thing that we would be very careful about in AGSI is putting up stuff about individuals that could be identified. We would rarely comment on operational matters. There's a lot of high profile incidents, obviously, as you can appreciate, before the courts, whether they're the criminal courts of justice, national or international crime. We would very, very seldom comment on operational police matters, Joanne. I think it would be wholly and totally inappropriate to get drawn into online conversations about something that's before the courts, for example, that could ultimately end up damaging an operational case or passing judgment on something that a court has to judge upon. So it can be the wrong forum, and that's why you have to consider very carefully before you press that blue button and put something out there that you're absolutely sure it is what you can say and that you want to stand over it, you know.
So you've developed what I call a Twitter instinct right now, and you're very intuitive and discerning about what you put out, when you put it out, and what not to talk about on the platform. And more organizations are looking to their senior leaders, and there's almost like an expectation that they have a Twitter profile or they will be willing to tweet when in a position. But people are so nervous, and I understand why, but given your experience of many years and using Twitter very well and very effectively, what advice would you give to your public sector peers who would really like to improve their Twitter use?
Yeah, I think the first of all is to, as I said, have a good profile, have an interesting profile. Make sure your company logo or your picture is up. Be identifiable, and that will make people trust you more. I think if you don't steer outside your organization's message too far, then you're not going to go too far wrong. I would say don't personalize things on Twitter. You know, don't if you want to raise an issue, raise the issue, but not the person. And that will give you more credibility. Of course, you can have light-hearted fun on there too. Like my own Twitter account, it's not all Garda business. Sometimes I might be just out in the garden and I might tweet something random. I might tweet a book that I'm reading. So it doesn't all have to be about business either. There can be a light-hearted side to it as well. You know, and people are equally interested in your private life as they are your public life, but only share what's appropriate to share. Don't cross into any territory that you're unsure of. If you're not sure, it's better not to tweet.
Yeah, if in doubt, leave it out, right?
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
I also see you interacting really well, and you mentioned it earlier with police forces and other representative organisations. Is that kind of cross country, cross continent collaboration and networking important in the public interest and for people to view that relationship publicly?
It really is, Joanne. And, you know, we always regard police forces all over the world as having similar type issues and similar type problems. Our bonds with our colleagues are very, very strong. Our bonds with our colleagues in the North, in the Police Federation of Northern Ireland, in the Scottish Police Federation, the British Transport Police, the London Met, across to Boston, across all police forces. We're involved in Eurocop, as you know, which is collaboration of all the police forces across Europe. And traditionally, for example, if something happened maybe in Scotland or in the North, if a colleague was injured, I'd be writing a letter expressing our collegiality and friendship. Now I can go on to Twitter. I can tag our friends in all police forces all over Europe. I can send a message of collegiality, a message of sympathy if somebody dies, an endorsement for something they might be advocating for, and it'll reach out to police forces all over Europe within 2 minutes. And it's a fantastic way then. Of course, they have their own Twitter accounts. So I'll pick up on them and I'll retweet their issues to show similarity between them and us. But certainly for messages of collegiality, for messages of support, to highlight issues that are the same with police forces all over the world, it's an absolutely excellent platform. And as I said, that instantaneous message goes out there for everybody to see. If my colleagues in the Police Federation of Northern Ireland are tweeting about officers injured in Belfast in some operational thing, they will know it in seconds that there's a message of friendship and collegiality from the Association of Guard Sergeants and Inspectors, and it's a great forum for that, you know.
So you mentioned earlier that you are restricted because of your job, but I'm not sure that that's a problem for you. I think that you've got a great understanding of how you're using it right now. But again, suffice to say, wherever your career might end up, your Twitter account will come with you, right? Because you own that account.
Yeah, I do. I own my own personal account. My own personal account is at AntoAbs. And that's my own Twitter account. And of course, it'll come with me. And I probably am restrained in my opinions. I probably would be far more opinionated were it not for the restrictions that I have in relation to my job. There's certainly matters of public debate that come up from time to time that I would say things about were I not restrained. But look, you have to respect the job that you're in. I have to respect the operational and role that I have. And most of all, I have to respect the Garda organisation because that is the job that I do at this present time. Who knows in the future? I can retire this year. Whether I do retire or not remains to be seen. But certainly if I do go into something else, I probably would be far more opinionated than I am currently.
I just think that's a lovely point, and I really appreciate you being so open in making that point, because it's not a negative thing that you're restrained. It's a respect thing, and it's respecting the people that you work with. It's respecting Twitter as a channel. And as you said earlier, play the ball, don't play the man or the woman. Play the issue, not the person. So, Antoinette, thank you so much for joining me on the Public Sector Marketing Show. And people should definitely go and follow you. And even as a case study in best practice and to learn from you, it's at AntoAbs, and I'll link it in the show notes. But thanks a million for joining me.
Thanks very much. Take care.